What's up, y'all? It is January 3rd, 2024, and I'm really excited about this video. This video is a major milestone both for me personally and for Geomancer as a whole, because this is our first stakeholder report. This is going to set kind of the standard for everything that we do in the future. Now, videos like this are the reason that we've been creating this content in the first place. And if you didn't know, the whole point here is really to provide the greatest amount of transparency and insight into what we are doing with crowdfunding money that we have gotten through our Patreon account. So yeah, if you haven't been on the Patreon, Geomancer is on there. We have several people who have been backing us for a long time. You know who you are, so thank you so much. We couldn't do this without you, obviously. And yeah, this video will hopefully be useful just in terms of communicating to you what we're doing with your money. So I got my notes here. Let's take a look. So as you can see on the Patreon there, we're currently pulling in about $321 a month, which is pretty amazing for a little permaculture project in Kentucky that no one's ever heard of. And the story with the Patreon is that I opened this account in, I think, either 2018 or 2019. At any rate, it wasn't very long after Geomancer had been formally incorporated as an entity. We really weren't ready to have a Patreon. We weren't doing that much anyway. But Patreon at the time had made an announcement they were going to be raising their rates, and anyone who was already a member prior to that date got to keep the old rates. So I said, hey, let's just make a Patreon account, and so we can get in under those old rates, and we'll develop it when the time comes. So for quite a while there, we just didn't really have anybody on there, didn't really tell people about it, little word of mouth. So let's take a peek under the hood of the Patreon there. As I said earlier, we are pulling in about $321 a month. 24 people are paying into that, so thank you again to those folks. And if I pull up the insights here, we'll look at the earnings all time, you can see, as I said, when I started this thing, for the first little while, there really wasn't anything going on. I wasn't telling anyone about it. And then slowly in mid-2019, people started to join up, throw $5 here, $1 there. And I really want to call out the people who joined at this point in time, because they really had a sort of visionary understanding of what we were trying to do. They really had a lot of faith in the project, because back then we hadn't done very much yet. And so just the fact that they showed that belief, really, you know who you are to those people, and my gratitude is with you forever. And so then we kind of started to grow throughout 2020, and you see this first real big spike here kind of in spring of 2022. That was a public event that I spoke at, or rather it was a private event for a group, and they appreciated my presentation, and a lot of people joined at that point, and we kind of jumped up and we're pulling in over $100 a month for the first time at that point. And then we've continued to grow throughout the last couple years, and really it's just been 2023, second half of 2023, that we've made a little more of a concerted effort to tell people about the Patreon. That big spike you see at the end there, where we all of a sudden made $400 that month, that was just a private client who wanted to thank us for a consult that we did so out on their property. So they just upped their donation for that particular month. So that's always something that can be done as well. We're grateful for really all the contributions that people are giving, and we see that the sky is the limit. The whole conceit of this thing, which is explained in the Patreon page, but the idea is that here in Central Kentucky, we can do some really interesting investments. We can make the money go further than it might if we were, say, a large coastal city in North America. So that is kind of the case that we're trying to make to you as a potential patron. or as a current patron. Now, the whole reason we do this is that in order to do the work that we need to create revolutionary change in society, we have to remain politically independent. We have to develop these decentralized methods of funding our activities so that it is not beholden to the whims of the capitalist market or to the dictates of any given private client, right? We want to be able to use ecological indicators on the landscape to propose interventions and then be able to fund those interventions and build power on an ecological basis over time. And this crowdfunding effort is ideally what will allow us to do that. So let's take a look here, and we can see that currently we're looking at $5,381 of accumulated funds in this Patreon account. That represents every dollar that has ever been given to us by our patrons over time, all the way back to whenever it was that I started the account. Now, some of you who have been following us for a while might remember that in March of 2022, we launched the Free Fruit Tree program as a crowdfunded effort. So that was marketed as kind of the first use of the Patreon, but in practice, it turned out that just the normal activities of Geomancer as a company were more than capable of funding the startup of that program. So we've actually, again, not pulled a single dollar just yet out of the Patreon. So now I think is the time to do that. We have this $5,300. It's an amazing sum, and in order to celebrate cracking that 5,000, let's pull this out. We actually hit 5,000 just in December of last year, but for tax purposes and everything else, I wanted to wait until January so we can just start fresh. And I'm learning Patreon as we go, so this will just be me documenting what I learn along the way. So let's go and hit this withdraw button. And I suppose I'll have to blur that out, but we'll confirm this. My goodness. Of course something happened. All right, we're going to try again. And this time it's definitely going to work. Made sure everything's connected up. So come on. Yes. All right. Okay, so we got the money. Now what? I'm going to go into our spreadsheet here. And this is going to be linked down below so anyone can come take a look at it. But as you can see, we have a cover sheet here. We got a couple tabs. This is just going to be where we report all our disbursements. And right now we have $321 a month. We have not allocated any funds to special projects or tax purposes or to the acquisition of property. But let's do that now, right? So if we go into our first tab here, this disbursement is January 3rd, 2024. And as we know, we have a $5,300 disbursement based on that $321 a month revenue. What do we want to do with this? First of all, I think I want to build a 10% tax buffer into anything that we do here. 10% is of course way too low for this tax, but keep in mind that the rest of the money is going to be spent on deductible things, so the overall burden is not going to be that large. That said, this really being, again, my first go around with Patreon, I'm just going to put that buffer in there, build it as a best practice, and we'll keep doing that moving forward until I have a better idea of how we're really going to get taxed for this crowdfunding revenue. So 10% tax buffer, say equals 10% of the disbursement, right. And we'll just say leaving some contingency there. All right. Next, this is kind of exciting, but WRFL marketing campaign. We're going to spend $1,500 on a local radio station here in town, WRFL 88.1, which is a college radio station, but also has been really adopted by the city as a whole, the community as a whole. It's a really cool alternative kind of radio station, and so we can get for this $1,500 a year, Geomancer becomes an underwriter to the station, and they will twice a day all year long put out some promos, talk about the company. And we've actually scripted some things with them where they will be talking about food sovereignty, they'll be talking about community control over housing and development. They also gave me some cool stuff when I stopped by and gave them the money, so thanks y'all. And it'll be exciting to just kind of have Geomancer's name out there in town, get more people knowing about what we're doing. And this is a speculative investment, certainly. Who knows if it's worth $1,500? It's not a really conventional ad, right? Because we're not trying to pick up private clients. We just want to get more people aware of what we're doing. Come find the YouTube channel, look on the Instagram, join the Patreon, frankly. So this one, I'm going to put a check in the paid column because it has already been paid. We're basically just kind of floated that from the company's existing budget, and that will be paid back from this disbursement. And we'll probably do that pretty regularly as we need to pay for special projects and such until we build up the special projects fund, and then we can float most of our expenses just right out of this Patreon. Speaking of which, I spoke to my CPA about this and everything's clear, so went ahead and started or opened 2 new bank accounts for just these Patreon funds. So we'll be able to really keep them separate from the rest of the money that the business is bringing in and using for projects, and that should just make it cleaner so that we can really explain to you guys, the Patreon supporters and our broader audience, just exactly what this money is being used for. Okay, what else do we want to put in here? We are going to throw about $2,000 of this towards labor, which adds up to about 133 hours at $15 an hour or so, which is should be higher, but it's pretty much what we can do right now. It's fine for Central Kentucky at this moment, but especially for some of the college students and such that we employ, it's a pretty good rate. We have a lot of people who approach us about volunteering on our projects, and I do welcome that from people who have some aptitude and motivation for this kind of work, but I want to pay them as much as possible. So $2,000 will go towards that. I do want to say I'm in a little bit of two minds about this because as a business, right, Geomancer is an independent private business. We should be able to fund our own labor costs out of the revenue that we're bringing in from our projects, and we do. That said, this money, having money from the crowdfunding to be able to pay for additional hours, is going to make our projects better, is going to allow us to run more projects. In case it's not clear, it should be clear. None of this money is going to be used to pay for hourly wages on private lands or for private clients or anything like that. This is all going to be directed towards Geomancer's self-initiated projects on public lands that we have access to. And so it's going to be the projects that we've already been pursuing, the projects that people want to support. We are just going to be able to put more work into them with this money. And the whole point of this crowdfunding thing is to make it so that Geomancer can be a completely self-funded, completely decentralized business where the money is just allowing us to do whatever we want, right? So at some point, all of our labor costs, ideally, in theory, could be covered by Patreon revenue. So I don't want to be shy about using it for that right now. All right. Next up, I want to start a property acquisition fund, which is exactly what it sounds, that we are going to put $1,000 here that is just going to be earmarked for the acquisition of property. And I'm being very careful about that, the wording there. It's not a land fund. This is not going to be used to start a homestead at some point where I can retire, or Geomancer can have a little farm or something like that. This is very explicitly money that is to be used for the acquisition of urban housing, where we can put people up and give people roofs over their heads so that they can help us do this work. And so we're going to be building the power and building the capacity of the organization on that basis, on the basis of housing. There may be some commercial properties that come up where, you know, maybe there's an opportunity for a plant production system, a greenhouse, something like that, strategically, if that's appropriate at that point in time. We'll look into that. But right now, really what I'm thinking is housing. We need to acquire housing and control housing so that we can get more people, kind of reduce the rent burden and the housing burden in general on more people so that they can participate more fully in the construction of Geomancer as a project long term. On that note, we also had a very generous patron kicked us a check for $1,000 just straight up to celebrate again reaching that $5,000 milestone. So it's actually more of a $6,300 milestone here, and I'm going to go ahead and put that $1,000 also into the property fund so that we can just have $2,000 right off the bat. My reasoning for that is that I think probably $200,000 is kind of the baseline entry level kind of point at which we can say that we're being serious about trying to acquire some property. So $2,000 is 1% of 200K, and therefore we can kind of say, all right, that gives us an idea of like how long is this really going to take for us to do that. And I should also explain, of course, that I'm aware that there's an opportunity cost in not using that money for something more interesting sooner, right? If we're just leaving it to sit in a bank account, there's an opportunity cost to that while we wait for it to accumulate to 200,000 or whatever it's going to be that we need to acquire some property. But we're being intentional about that and saying we're doing that anyway because acquiring property, control of the land, etc., is just such a fundamental part of any kind of long-term success for this project. So we always want to be communicating about that, and we want to be building towards that, even from these early days, even if it's just 1% or $2,000 at a time. Okay, what comes next? I think you can see here on the spreadsheet, I'm not a spreadsheet wizard, right? But I've done my best to kind of automate this to a certain extent, make it clear for everybody. But we have about 343.56 unencumbered so far. So I'm going to put, oh, don't do that. Let's see, 343.56. Yep. And that is going to be our special projects fund allocation this time around. So that's for our future selves. And yeah, so that will be kind of our best practice moving forward. Any spillover that we have, we'll just go into the special projects fund. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's just, it's crowdfunded money that spills over, and you know, we'll use it when we find a need for it. We don't have to allocate everything down to the penny each disbursement. But again, we've created new bank accounts for these so that money can just sit off to the side. It won't get confused with the rest of whatever Geomancer is doing at the time. So yeah, we get 344 in the special projects, 1,000 in the property fund, and 538 was pulled out for the tax buffer, which I will now update here on our main page. That is going to just help everyone at a glance keep up with what we're doing. 344. So yeah, again, this will be linked down below, and anyone can come at any time and just take a look at where we stand on that that cover page there that you see. And I did put $2,000 in the property acquisition fund there to reflect the $1,000 that we got donated. So thank you again to that patron. That's very generous and pretty amazing, really. What I think we can accomplish. This is just the beginning. So thank you for watching this video. Hopefully it made a lot of sense. Hopefully you find your way to the spreadsheet if you're a patron, or even if you're not and you're just curious and you want to see how we're trying to be transparent about all this. And yeah, hopefully this will be an interesting video to look back on in the future when we have a lot more money and we're doing a lot more interesting things. But you got to start somewhere. And thank you to everyone who's been along for the ride this far.